Good morning. It's Chuck Griever coming to you live from Bristol, Virginia, USA. And kind of want to pick up where we left off yesterday. And so we're going to resume with that teaching. This is not going to be a short teaching. It's going to come to you in small pieces. So today, this is part 2 of Do We Dare to Understand Jehovah's Word? Deuteronomy 4:27, and then Deuteronomy 28:36 and 37. And that's going to be a hunk of scripture for today, and there's more. Okay? Deuteronomy 4:27. Jehovah will scatter you among the people. And we was talking about Gentile people, okay? And only a few of you will survive among the nations which Jehovah will drive you. Deuteronomy 4:27. Ever been driven? I have. Deuteronomy 28:36. Jehovah will drive you and the king you set over you to a nation unknown to you or your fathers. There you will worship other gods, gods of wood and stone. And there you shall serve other gods, wood and stone. And you shall become an astonishment, a proverb and a byword among all nations where Jehovah will drive you. Yet on the heels of this, he tells them what will happen following his promise. He mentions what will happen when they choose to return to his ways. When all these blessings and curses I have set before you come upon you, and you take them to heart wherever your Elohim disperses you among the nations. And when you and your children return to Jehovah, your Elohim, and obey him with all your heart and with all your soul according to everything I command you today, then Jehovah, your Elohim, will restore you and your fortunes and have compassion on you and gather you again from all the nations where he scattered you. Even if you have been banished to the most distant land under the heavens, from there Jehovah, your Elohim, will gather you and bring you back. He will bring you to the land that belonged to your fathers, and you will take possession of it. He will make you more prosperous and numerous than your fathers. Deuteronomy 30:1-5. There's an awful lot of good information in Deuteronomy, isn't there? So restoration comes on the heels of a corrected course. How merciful is that? He is a God of mercy and grace. There are folks that say that walking according to Jehovah's will is too difficult. Some have said that the covenant was made too difficult for them to follow on purpose. Could that be true? Was it an impossibility to follow these commands in complete obedience? Of course not. It's simply that Jehovah knew their hearts and that they may choose wrongly because of their weaknesses. Now, what I'm commanding you today is not too difficult for you or beyond your reach. It is not up in heaven so that you have to ask who will ascend into heaven to get it and proclaim it to us so that we may obey it. nor is it beyond the sea, so that you have to ask who will cross the sea to get it and proclaim it to us so that we may obey it. No, the word is very near to you. It is in your mouth and in your heart so that you may obey it. Deuteronomy 30:11 through 14. There it is. He has put it in your heart and in your mouth so that you may obey it. The Apostle Paul wrote about this very same thing in Romans chapter 9. And the Apostle John also wrote, "For this is the love of Jehovah, that we keep his commandments. And his commandments are not burdensome. For whoever is born of Jehovah overcomes the world. And this is the victory that has overcome the world, our faith." 1 John 5, verses 3 and 4. Yet to whom does it say that this new covenant was given? So, he says, I am making this covenant with this oath, not only with you who are standing here with us today in the presence of Jehovah, our Elohim, but also with those who are not here today. Deuteronomy 29, verses 14 and 15. So this covenant was given not only to that generation, but to all generations who would come after them. After receiving this added covenant, the Israelites began taking back the land of Canaan and eventually desired to have a king over them. First there was Saul, then David, then Solomon. It must be noted, however, that all 12 tribes and the aliens or Gentiles who came in with them were governed by all three of these three kings. But then Solomon began leading the people of Israel to follow other gods. Remember, Jehovah said he would scatter them among the nations if they didn't follow his instructions. Consequently, after Solomon died, Jehovah gave the 10 tribes of Israel to Solomon's servant Jeroboam. Thus, the beginning of the scattering of Israel across the nations began. Then he said to Jeroboam, take 10 pieces for yourself. So this is what Jehovah Elohim of Israel says. See, I'm going to tear the kingdom out of Solomon's hand and give you 10 tribes. But for the sake of my servant David and the city of Jerusalem, which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel, he will have one tribe. I will do this because they have forsaken me and worshipped Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, Shemos, the god of the Moabites, Moloch, the god of the Ammonites, and have not walked in my ways, nor done what is right in my eyes, nor kept the statutes and the laws as David, Solomon's father, did. 1 Kings 11, verses 31 through 33. 1 Kings 11, 31 through 33. So, it's all there. Jeroboam was king over the 10 tribes of Israel, and even though he was of the tribe of Ephraim, he led them into idolatry. He was also in charge of the whole labor force of the house of Joseph, as given just a couple of verses later. And we need to remember that here, that it was Ephraim, son of Joseph, that was promised to become the fullness of the nations, the Gentiles. the fullness of those not belonging to Jehovah's nation. And so here we see the prophecy to Ephraim begin to unfold and manifest. It is here that Israel is divided into two nations, or two divisions, a northern and a southern kingdom. The northern kingdom, that being the 10 tribes that left with Jeroboam, often referred to in Scripture as the house of Israel, house of Joseph or Ephraim. And the southern kingdom, that being Judah and Benjamin, with Benjamin eventually assimilating into Judah, referring to in the Scriptures as the house of Judah. Referring to in the Scriptures as the house of Judah. The northern kingdom eventually established their capital in Samaria. And yet for over 200 years, the northern kingdom did nothing different than that of Solomon in the eyes of Jehovah, our Elohim. They disobeyed Jehovah's instructions and followed after other gods. It came to the point that Jehovah no longer called them his people. Then Jehovah, the Lord, said, "Call them, lo, me, for you are not my people, I am not your Elohim." Hosea 1:9. The king of Assyria then brought in foreign people into the land of Samaria. He later sent the priests back to teach them the ways of Jehovah. Isn't that interesting? So one of the priests who had been exiled from Samaria came to live in Bethel and taught them how to worship Jehovah. Nevertheless, each national group made its own gods in several towns where they settled and set them up in shrines the people of Samaria had made in high places. And so in 2 Kings 17:28 through 34, we find this. See, my back is itching. The men from Babylon made Succoth Benoth. The men from Cutha made Nergal. And the men from Hamath made Ashima. The Abites made Nibaz and Tartak, and the Sephirites burned their children in the fire as sacrifices to Adrammelech, the gods of Sephrim. They worshipped Jehovah, but they also appointed all sorts of their own people to officiate for them as priests in the shrines at the high places. They worshiped Jehovah. They did. But they also served their own gods, the little gods of wood and metal and whatever. In accordance with the custom of the nations from which they had been brought, to this day they persist in their former practices. They neither worship Jehovah nor adhere to the decrees and ordinances, the laws and commands that Jehovah gave the descendants of Jacob, whom he named Israel. 2 Kings 17:28 through 34. So it's not like they weren't warned. They knew that what they were doing was against Jehovah. Jehovah warned Israel just before crossing the Jordan with the added covenant that this would happen if they didn't obey, but they ignored the covenant of Jehovah that said, and this is Deuteronomy 28 through 28:36. Jehovah will drive you and the kings you set over you to a nation unknown to you or your fathers. There you will worship other gods, gods of wood and stone. You will become a thing of horror and an object of scorn and ridicule to all the nations where Jehovah will drive you. Again, that's Deuteronomy 28:36. So Jehovah does what he says. When he tells you what he's going to do, that's what he does. And so now we see in 721 BC this scripture in Deuteronomy beginning to unfold as the people of Israel no longer remain a people, but begin assimilating into the nations. They were scattered all over the world. Even Isaiah said, for the head of Aram is Damascus. The head of Damascus is only Rezin. Within 65 years, Ephraim will be too shattered to be a people. Isaiah 7, verse 8. They were no longer a people. They were no longer Jehovah's people. In sending the northern kingdom off to Assyria, Jehovah declared he divorced her through Jeremiah. And so Jeremiah said, I gave faithless Israel her certificate of divorce and sent her away because of all of her adulteries. Jeremiah 3:8. Let's remember that the reason Jehovah divorced the 10 tribes of the northern kingdom was because they hardened their hearts and rejected Jehovah's law in pursuing other gods. As a result of this divorce, they were truly no longer Israel and no longer his people. I can't imagine. We need to be careful that the same thing doesn't happen to us. Abba Jehovah has zero tolerance for idolatry. And many of us are participating in idolatry and don't even know it. Christmas trees are a good example. Shalom, my friends. Chuck Griever. I pray that something in this opens your eyes so that you can see who you really are. I'll be back tomorrow with some more of this. Bye-bye.